please turn to channel 2 for English, and we would like to introduce you to the moderator of this session. He is distinguished Professor An Chung-young of Graduate School of International Studies at Jung University.
To the 17th Jeju Forum. Thank you for joining us today for Toward Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, Roadmap and Challenges. Simultaneous interpretation is available for this session. For service in Korean, set your device on channel 1. For English, select channel 2. Now I would like to hand over the stage to An Chung-young, President of Korea Foundation for Advanced Studies, who will moderate this session. Everyone, please welcome the moderator.
Good morning. Good morning, Professor Sujiro Urata, and good morning, Professor Choi Byung-il from East Asia, and good evening to Jeff Schott in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for joining this program in hybrid fashion from your very, very busy schedule. Oh, here. Professor Zhang Young-lin, how are you? Can you hear me? Good morning, Zhang Young-lin. Well, anyway, he joined. Maybe he might adjust his own system.
No, so.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay, I hear you, yes, it's okay.
Good. I said to you, good morning.
Morning.
Well, at this session, it is really great. We can discuss the emerging issues of launching of the U.S. initiative Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, its prospect and challenges. I'm really pleased to moderate this session. Let me first introduce our distinguished panelists very briefly in alphabetical order. To my left, Professor Choi Byung-il, one of the most well-known experts on international trade in Korea, now serving as president of the Korea Foundation for Advanced Studies. Next, the Jeffrey Schott, Senior Research Fellow at the prestigious Peterson Institute of International Economics in Washington, D.C. Jeff is truly a trade analysis guru, not only in the United States, but also in the world. Next, Professor Urata of Waseda University, who is also the leading voice of Japan in trade economics. He published a number of books and articles. Last but not least, Professor Zhang Young-lin, Director of Academic Division of International Studies, Chinese Academy of Social Science. As his job title says, Professor Zhang Young-lin is the leading authority in international economics in China. Well, I thought I assembled the best talent, the best expert available to discuss this subject matter. Well, as you know well, the US President Joe Biden announced the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework in October 2021 after seeing the scrapping of the long-heralded Trans-Pacific Partnership by President Trump, and then followed by the effectuation of CPTPP with only 11 members without United States. And then we saw another effectuation of great regional trade, RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, effective early this year. Through this regional, the effectuation of a mega deals, the US is out of the picture. Then I thought this US is sort of the marginalized in the Asia-Pacific, the economic integration process, although you as a anchor economy of the NAFTA. Well, the US invited as founding members 13 countries, Japan, Australia, Korea, New Zealand, India, ASEAN 7, except the Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, then finally Fiji. According to the report, the IPEF contains basically 4 pillars. First, rule-based trade promotion in Asia-Pacific. And second, supply chain resilience by avoiding excessive dependence on one particular country, perhaps in this case referring to China, I believe, prone to disruption due to pandemic, weather anomaly, and perhaps political reasons. Then third element, encouraging clean energy infrastructure investment. Finally, the last pillar is related to tax issues, tax avoidance and anti-corruption. The head of the USTR and the Department of Commerce said, IPEF is to address the challenges in the 21st century global economy. US Trade Representative Ms. Trice said, US wish to finalize agreement for each pillar within 12 months or 18 months. Even allows the early harvest of whatever pillars could be concluded ahead of the others. So it seems to me the negotiation process is very quick and short compared to other mega regional deals like the CPTPP or the RCEP. Last week, all 14 members held the IPEF ministerial meeting in Los Angeles to reach agreement on annotated agenda for each of the pillars. All 14 countries accepted the text except India, which did not agree to the trade pillar. However, IPEF does not deal with market access issues, such as tariff reduction or eliminate. Neither IPEF deal with the investor-state dispute settlement. Some Southeast Asian economy at the initial stage expressed they're rather lukewarm toward a US initiative because there's no incentive, such as the market access to the United States. And unlike other trade pact, this IPEF is based on US executive order, which is far less enforceable to trade pact. And also it seems to me the membership is based on US invitation by excluding China at the inception stage. It's reported that one of the purposes is to contain China's influence in the regional economy. Well, at this stage, IPEF involves issues of membership inclusivity, the system durability. Well, it could sustain even after Biden administration, or system credibility. And again, the enforceability, because this is the executive order of US government. And some critics also say that it lacks transparency in the initial stage. With this background information, let us see how our panelists view each of those subtopics I raised. First, for Jeff Sharp, maybe you might add something I missed in introducing some background information, okay? And question, beyond the subsidies and IPR issues, transparency, China is also working very hard to include these things when China applied for the CPTPP, the membership. Then, how the security issues, the U.S. is saying that China is excluded for the reasons of some security element. And would you clarify how security issues are interconnected through the 4 pillars, okay? And another question, assuming the early harvest of some pillars, how do you view the timeline? Is 12 months or 18 months long enough to settle down all the important 4 pillars? So, Jeff, you take the floor.
Well, thank you.
감사합니다. 네, 안 교수님 감사합니다. 오늘 제가 여러분들과 함께 패널에서 대화를 하게 되어 정말 기쁩니다. 가장 적임자들을 또 무역 분야에서 가장 아시아에서 탁월하신 분들을 초청해 주신 자리라서 정말 감사드립니다. 모든 이슈에 대해서 다 제가 찬성하는 것은 아닙니다. 하지만 이 배우는 과정이 계속 지속될 수 있기를 바랍니다. 감사합니다.
The first thing to add.
그러면 제가 소개 말씀을 잘해 주셨는데요. 첨언하겠습니다. 과연 이런 모든 과정이 필요했었을까? 특히 인도 태평양 이니셔티브에 관련돼서 만약 WTO가 제대로 작동이 되었더라면 과연 이렇게 IPEF가 필요했었을까 생각이 듭니다. 주요 무역 국가들이 한자리에 모여서 뭔가 공통 법규를 마련을 했더라면 문제가 되지 않았을까 생각이 듭니다. 그리고 분명히 어떤 집행력이 있거나 실행력이 있고 그리고 또 적절한 글로벌 차원에서 전 세계에 영향을 끼칠 수가 있었다라고 한다면 그렇다면 균형 잡힌 그리고 또 비차별적인 무역 국가 체제가 계속 지속되지 않았을까 생각합니다. 그런데 불행하게 기존의 무역 체제가 제대로 작동이 되지 않았습니다. 그리고 필요한 결과를 충분히 창출하지 못했고요. 새롭게 부상되는 이슈들, 새로운 도전 과제들, 또 새롭게 20세기에 들어와서 작성이 되었던 무역 법규들 자체가 좀 더 업데이트가 되어야 되는데 제대로 이루어지지 않았습니다. 그래서 제네바에서 이루어지고 있었던 이 모든 과정들이 너무 속도가 느렸고 또 부담이 되거나 혹은 제대로 작동이 되지 않았던 것입니다. 그리고 GPP 그리고 RCEP 국가들 모든 국가들이 WTO 토대 위에서 만들어졌지만 불행하게 미국 같은 경우는요. 소위 말하는 전략적인 트럼프 대통령의 조치 때문에 어쩔 수 없이 TPP에서
Biden, to his credit, wants to ensure that the U.S. is re-engaged in this most important region. in the Asia Pacific. But given the political constraints and the very fractious politics of trade in the United States left over from the Trump era, I think moving forward with a constructive Indo-Pacific initiative can be constructive, can be helpful. But the problem is that the countries gathered together, as you said, were not. It is not an open regionalism. There is some selection, and most of the countries have important trading relationships with China that need to be maintained in some form, and indeed are being augmented through their participation in the RCEP. Just as China is trying to augment its relationship with Asia-Pacific countries by its application to join the CPTPP. So we will have to see how this works out. But so far, I think the conclusion is the Los Angeles meetings were very constructive in reaching broad-scale agreement among the participating countries on the objectives of the exercise. But it is one thing to agree to objectives, it is another to adopt to specific obligations. And I think that will be a more challenging exercise as the countries talk together. So I'm sure we will go into the detail on that. So I will leave that that part of the answer right there. On the issue of security, I think it is important to note that economic security is critical in these days. It has been underscored by the challenges that all of our countries have faced because of the pandemic, because of the disruptions to supply chains due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine that have hurt all of our nations and caused even greater hardships to the poorest countries in the world. And it is critical in the new areas of technology that are so important for future growth that there be an adequate system of rules, enforceable rules that ensure the integrity of the technology so that there is continued incentive to invest in research and development and commercialization. The issue of economic security is a very, very extensive one, but it is an issue that no country can secure its economy by itself, because as we have seen in many of our countries, natural disasters as well as pandemic, as well as actions by other countries can disrupt supply chains. And so one has to have a more resilient system of supply chains than one that is based much too much on efficiency and much too little on balancing the efficiency with some insurance against political and natural disasters. So if the Indo-Pacific Initiative can help clarify positions on economic security, it will be very helpful and informative for broader regional and multilateral discussions. And hopefully there will be that learning process. Final point on early harvest. There seems to be a hope that there could be an early agreement in the digital economy space, though unfortunately that is grouped along with other even more controversial issues such as labor and environment and competition policy. And so, and it also involves differing positions with regard to access to data localization requirements, privacy concerns. So this will be a challenge, as it has been going in the past, in the WTO. And one of the reasons why it has spawned other initiatives like the Digital Economy Partnership Agreement, which is another avenue for constructive negotiation among participating countries. And I know Korea and China and others are hoping to participate in that agreement as well. So I've spoken too much to start, but you gave me a long list of to lead off with, and I hope to learn a lot from my colleagues on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Very insightful, the comments, and clarified some points, I raised. Professor Zhang Yonglin, you heard of this introduction and the Jeff short comments. What would be the China's position on the U.S. proposed IPEF? It seems to me IPEF is really addressing international public goods to promote a cross-border trade in more transparent, on a level playing field. But on one hand, okay? On the other hand, it also, obviously, they contain the China's rise because China is not involved as a founding member. So how would you react on these two, the conflicting point of view?
I think China politically, as a policy, is wait and see. We have not seen any official, comments on that, good or bad. But a lot of discussions within experts groups, and somebody think will not work well because it's combining so different members. The second, that is on some issues, I think may not be realized as U.S. expect. And also for political reasons, and this is really clearly designed against China. So that, as Jeffrey said just now, if you see the members, including the United States, you have so many trade relations, other relations, and because China is the #1 trade economy, so you can't live without China, to make any kind of real working arrangements. So that's, I think, forces for supply chain security. It's okay, yes, it's very important. And I think it's crucial to make agreement as what, we have done for China and Korea. Though we have many differences, but two governments assured they will try to any possibility to secure and stabilize the supply chains. And also this COVID effect, we have different policy, but sooner or later China will end it. I don't know when, but I think it will not probably too long. And because the economies really need, quick change. But government still is a big, very special concern. It is spreading effects among the big populations. So supply chain an issue has tell all of us. So we have, to make something. For instance, why not we make, within APEC agenda? So APEC members can work on that, and we can make specific arrangements how to secure. Because supply chain is a very complex issue. As you can generally say supply chain, but if you go to detail, every kind of chain is different. So they need different arrangements, different among the different partners, but we can So I think this is really high political agenda, behind with the strategic designing from the United States. If you see the others also, So that's why I said wait and see. But China, I propose to the government also should do more on this, supply chain security, and with close partners, even include that as IPEF members. Why not with Japan? Why not with ASEAN members? And even to discuss about EU, because China's supply rely on the others, and also the others rely on China. So we should not make it too political. And but it's very hard because the U.S. all concerned about China and seems China can change everything, and so that's make our region, our world, our partners divided. That's what I'm worried about, because if this direction goes on, they will create a quite different dimension and for our region. And the world may be divided, and what we have established, it doesn't work at all. But China still shows, though, whatever you agree or not, but China still shows very strong interest to participate any possible arrangements, like applied government set up a special big team to study how to join CPTPP. I hope that Japan will open the negotiations. If you don't agree, but you open the negotiation, we can agree on based on negotiations. The negotiation may last for 10 years or 20 years, but however, you open this agenda to reach the agreement. And China also is applying the DEPA, the digital arrangement, and shows anything they can discuss about. So what we should create is kind of environment, when we have political strategic differences, but economic integration, cooperation, and it's still the key factor to defend our world and region. So politically, it's very clear against it, but practically, I think is any possibility we can make arrangement, and also we can make the parallel arrangements, and along with this IPEF, and so use this existing so many institutions. So not let IPEF to block anything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zhang. I'm really delighted your point on the security and supply chain. Maybe I may get back in terms of the Korea-China relationship later on, especially with respect to Korea's high-altitude missile defense system. All right, now let me invite the Professor Urata. Japan has fully supported the U.S. initiative from the very beginning. Trade of high-tech product is increasingly security-oriented, partly mentioned by Jeff Sharp, and obviously looking for a like-minded partners in terms of security, in terms of the reliability, in terms of the credibility. But economically, Japan, this is true for Korea, are deeply linked with China. For example, Korea imports about 80% of the cobalt and magnesium and the urea water, even rare earths, which are essential to manufacture the electric battery and the electric vehicle, so forth. So I think most of the East Asian economies do not want to be enforced to side with either the US or China in terms of the economic linkage. Well, given this, dichotomic structure, how would Japan navigate between the goal of Indo-Pacific economic framework and indispensable dependence on China's market access, including even the medium or low-end semiconductors? Go ahead.
No. Yes. I'd like to begin by thanking Professor An and the organizers for inviting me to a very important conference. And thank you very much for these questions that Professor An gave me to respond. First, I think this economic security or national security is very important for many countries. And in my view, we, say Japan, this is my personal view, okay, can divide, say, the items, like issues, which are related to national security and which are not related to national security. Say, in terms of trading goods, there are many goods which are not directly related to national security. That for supply chain of these products, of course, we don't need to really exclude any countries. We have to include all the countries. And whereas for the products which are very sensitive, related to national security, unfortunately, we have to set up the supply chains involving like-minded countries. And in my view, in Japan it's called IPEF, is established to deal with the latter part of, the second group of products or services or investment. Whereas for the first group of goods and services, say, in terms of relationship with China, we can use RCEP already. Of course, Japan and China are members of RCEP. And I hope that China will join CPTPP, although, according to Dr. Zhang Yunlin, Japan is not really, interested in negotiating with China. But again, this is my personal view. I think negotiation of CPTPP participation by China is very important for various reasons. One, I think many people agree that there are some trade practices which we like, trade practices that China performs, which many countries like to see corrected. IPR infringement, violation of IPR, or forced technology transfer in the case of foreign direct investment and so on. And in order for China to join CPTPP, China needs to satisfy these conditions, which include such as free trade, free investment, and so on. So, in my view, countries in CPTPP can use, maybe use is not the right expression, but use the opportunity for China's negotiation with China in participating CPTPP to correct, to change China's trade practices. So it may take some time, like Dr. Zhang Yunli said, but I'd like to see China to join with appropriate policies. So that's my view on supply chains and China and national security. And let me just add a few more things, if I may. I think the significance of IPEF is, there are various, many. One is, of course, this is a U.S. initiative, and the U.S. participation in Indo-Pacific area is welcome. And in addition, India, as Professor An told us earlier, that India, withdrew from RCEP, but through IPEF, India, although they, I guess, opted out from trade pillar, but they're still, India is a member of IPEF. And India and the US, and of course China, these are very important countries, Korea, Japan, and so on. But again, India and US participation is very important for all the countries in Indo-Pacific. So I welcome these two developments. And then another significance of IPEF is that as we acknowledge or as we agree, there are many issues, trading goods, trading services, investment, IPR, and so on. To deal with these issues with many countries, it's good to have several frameworks, not just one. Of course, ideally, as Jeff emphasized earlier, WTO is the best. And Jeff told us some of the problems that they have been making decisions. So given that circumstances, I think these frameworks, such as IPEF, RCEP, CPTPP, are very important to make the trading, investment, and so on environment as free, open, stable, fair, and so on. So IPEF is an addition to these two existing frameworks, RCEP and CPTPP. And as I read the text of the leaders, I guess, meeting in May, I understand that IPEF emphasizes cooperation and capacity building. And that is very new in my view. It's not, WTO talks about, capacity building, but capacity building in terms of being able to participate in, trade negotiation and so on. But the IPEF, what I read is that this is really in order, this cooperation and capacity buildings is to improve the capability of the countries and maybe people in IPEF countries to improve their capability in doing business. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but what I understand is that US offered a technical assistance to women in IPEF countries in the area of IT, information technology, and some companies already, I guess, showed interest in providing such assistance to women in IPEF countries. So again, I think this is very important, emphasizing cooperation and capacity building. Well, let me stop there. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sujiro Urata. I'm so delighted that you support China's early entry CPTPP, although you said this is your personal view, if China joins CPTPP and if the US returns to CPTPP and Korea now is just ready to submit the official applications, maybe all these major stakeholders would be very good shape riding the same boat of the CPTPP. Maybe I may come back this issue later on, especially to Jeff Sharp on this point. Now, Professor Choi Byung-il, you waited sort of a long time. I think after listening to our distinguished speakers' assessment, Korea is number 4 economy among the IPEC, you see, the founding members, US, Japan, and India, and Korea. What the role Korea can play in pushing through the ideals of IPEF, that's sort of the middle power, what would be Korea's balance sheet, benefit or liability by becoming IPEF founding members? I mean, obviously we can benefit a lot, the more rule-based and transparent the global system, but on the other hand, maybe, we face the similar problem, our dependence on the China, how we can, again, navigate between, US, China, sort of the confrontation along this line. Go ahead, please.
Well, thank you very much, Professor An. First of all, let me reiterate, like my former colleague, the reason why I call former colleague is I haven't seen them yet in face after outbreak of corona pandemic. I really wanted to see them in Jeju, in person, face-to-face talk, but somehow we have benefit of digital, the facility which can make this possible. Well, to me, IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, is nowhere to economic framework. Seems to me this is very unconventional and I should say unilateral attempt by US try to deal with the new underlying currents. That new underlying currents are 2 or 3 things. One was intensifying US-China power competition, and also outbreak of and also never receding COVID-19 pandemic. And experts are warning that we may be exposed to another pandemic maybe sometime not quite late, but the world may not be ready for this because so far we haven't seen any global effort to deal with corona pandemic at collective basis. And also on top of that, climate change and digital transformation, and then to make matters worse, Russia invaded Ukraine, and again we are experiencing food crisis, energy crisis, and so on and so forth. So to me, this is not economic framework, this is economic security framework. And unlike many typical trade negotiations, I do not see any structure of reciprocity. To conclude any agreement, you should have certain structure give and take. But for me, many participating developing economies from ASEAN regions, I do not see what sort of benefit do they get from this agreement if we can have agreement at the end of the day. And also, we had 4 pillars, and among those trade pillars, I was struck by seeing on the top of the list, starting with labor environment. This is nowhere close to typical trade, their pillars. So this is something some EU members and some activists and Democratic Party in US has been campaigning for decades to see on trade agenda. And I see finally it has arrived. So in case of trade, you do not see that much market access discussion at all, period, but more about how you can harmonize a regulatory framework in case for dealing with supply chain disruptions. So to me, out of those 4 pillars, especially fair economy and clean economy, I think it is going to be a mistake to expect any meaningful agreement out of this, because this is heavily overloaded agenda from Biden administration, which represent US workers and environmental activists. So to me, if there's any progress, meaningful progress is going to be in case supply chains. This is where Korea is very keen. I think Japan is very keen, and other countries are very keen. Because the whole purpose of supply chain, they try to create a so-called the big fence and small yard approach. So that's the reason why they're talking about, they try to identify what will be critical sectors, as Professor Urata rightly pointed out. I don't think they're going to deal with entire goods and product across border. They try to identify, hopefully, very few sectors, critical sectors. But question is how they can agree on which is going to be critical sectors. Maybe I think U.S. is going to have a lot of say. And in this regard, I think some middle power countries like Korea and Japan and Australia, they should express their concern. As we have seen, passage of U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, it was very much unilateral. So to me, what Korea can achieve from this Indo-Pacific economic framework is if you can agree on some lowest common denominator, you can identify which will be critical sectors and what you can do about it. So this leaves me, at the end of the day, implementation issues. So what if some country, for one reason or another, not abide by rules and norms? What can do about it? And the other side of the coin is, what if some country of this IPEF become target of non-members, such as trade retaliation? Then can IPEF as collective unit or US can provide some security, can compensate for the loss of the commercial loss? I think those will be two ultimate litmus tests. I think those questions will hanging very high in the minds of negotiators. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dr. Che, thank you very much. Your very candid view. Taking over Dr. Choi's comment, the IPEF is not the trade framework. It's basically a security framework. But yet, the IPEF contains a trade pillar as first the important item, and also the recognizing importance of the supply chain resilience. Well, Jeff, early the panelists mentioned that, including myself, the IPEF does not include the market access, okay? And then I think the UN, some US position is that the completing digital trade pact could be a good complement or good substitute for the market access to the United States. That means through the digital trade, small and medium enterprises can easily trade with the US, more convenient, cost less. That's the question I have. And the second question is, Professor Urata mentioned that his view is that China should join CPTPP. Okay, that means U.S. should return to CPTPP as early as possible to push through high standard practiced by major stakeholders in the Asia-Pacific economy. So how you view on this?
Okay, well, two very simple, easy questions. But let me just answer them very briefly. There's a lot of confusion when people say that the Indo-Pacific Initiative is not about market access. Of course it's about market access. Otherwise, people wouldn't be interested. It is not about tariff liberalization, a lot of which has already occurred on a regional basis or through the various rounds of multilateral trade negotiations. But market access can be obstructed by protectionist standards, by various other types of non-tariff practices that limit the ability to contest in the market. And so if you could set common standards, that would be a way of removing that type of discrimination. But you have to set the standards with the main economies at the table, which is why it needed to be done in Geneva. But there were some major economies, one of whom is partially included in the Indo-Pacific Initiative, that obstruct those types of exercises. And we saw that most recently in the ministerial conference of the WTO last summer, where the United States and China actually worked together and allowed some modest results to come about, including the continuation of the moratorium on restrictions on e-commerce. So I think one has to recognize that the Indo-Pacific is about market access, but in a very specific way. And who is setting the terms? What is the benchmark for the standards? You could take the RCEP, you could take the TPP standards, you could take the USMCA standards, many of which are taken directly from the TPP. But a number of the countries haven't been willing to sign up to the CPTPP. Some, like China, are now willing to sign up, but we don't know under what terms with regard to the length of the transition, whether there would be some specific exemptions required, whether there be 10 years of negotiation or longer would the agreement be enforced while the rest of the agreement is being phased in. These are all open questions, and as Dr. Zhang has said, they would come out more clear. The issues would be clarified in negotiations, and but I suspect that those negotiations will be difficult in any event. The last point on the United States, before President Biden took office, I was publicly and loudly arguing for the United States to return to the CPTPP. It's an agreement based on U.S. values and U.S. practices. It's an agreement that we invested a lot of effort into building. It basically, even though the Congress didn't like the TPP, they accepted most of the TPP requirements when they adopted the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, which was a revision of NAFTA, but included a lot of the TPP or CPTPP provisions. So President Biden basically has a political problem. His major constituencies in his party don't like the trade liberalization in the TPP, and so are blocking him or others in the administration from any overtures to go back to it. And I suspect that this is a policy that will last not just past the midterm elections, but probably throughout the first term of the Biden administration, because it will be contested again during the presidential election in 2024. So I'm not optimistic about U.S. returning anytime soon to the CPTPP. I think that's a big mistake for the United States and for our trading partners in the Asia Pacific. But I'm hoping that other initiatives can at least partially redress the costs that are incurred by the U.S. staying out of the TPP.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Professor Sujiro Urata, one of the candidates for the early harvest package among the 4 pillars, I think many experts agree on that digital trade agreement could be a very good candidate, could be reached rather quickly. And at the moment, digital economic partnership agreement between I believe, Singapore, New Zealand, and Chile, 3 countries involved. So then, I'm thinking of CPTPP also address, digital trade issues, right? Therefore, the quality of digital trade to be reached by IPEF must be higher than the CPTPP's clause. So how do you view that? You agree with the digital trade area pact among the IPEF pillars could be the first very concrete example through which all the stakeholders can see real benefit, okay, by seeing the early arrival of the clause. How you see it?
Yes, right. Digital trade is the one issue which is very important. But as far as I understand it, from the level of, like you talk about standard of the agreement, U.S.-Japan digital trade agreement is quite high. I think USMCA and CPTPP, they're about the same level, so to speak. And the RCEP is, standard is a little lower because of its many exceptions. But the DIPA, as far as I understand, it's not really an agreement. It's like, it's not like enforceable agreement, so to speak. It's like, a more informal, voluntary participation. So it's not, you cannot really compare the level of standard of DIPA versus others. And IPEF, in my view, is trying to introduce high levels such as US-Japan Digital Trade Agreement, USMCA, CPTPP, involving other countries, right? Other Asian countries, which are not member to CPTPP. So in terms of level of standard law or highest, I think IPEF is trying to get as high as, say, CPTPP or USMCA or US-Japan digital trade. Having said this, there are, of course, negotiations done under or sideline of WTO. As many as maybe 70 or 80 countries are participating in negotiation of e-commerce or digital trade. So there are several ongoing discussions and negotiations, and hope that each one of them will contribute to the establishment of open and free, fair trade agreement. And can I just raise one issue? So, since we have opportunity, we have a very good chance to ask Jeff, because U.S. is the initiator of this IPEF. I'm just concerned about the continued U.S. participation and leadership in IPEF. What I'm trying to say is that Biden administration, in a midterm election, which is coming up very soon, according to many observers, Democrats will lose majority in maybe lower house. Next presidential election, it's possible that Republican may come back. Can we expect the continued U.S. leadership participation in IPEF, even under different political circumstances in the U.S.? So, sorry that I took the opportunity to ask this question to Jeff, but maybe other people are interested in hearing his response to my question. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, go ahead. Actually, that's one of the questions I wanted to ask. Okay.
Okay, I want to hear from Dr. Zhang and Dr. Jay, so let me be very brief on this. we have a problem in the United States that there is a coalition in both parties that is strongly opposed to trade negotiations and want to impose more trade protectionism, regardless of the international trading rules. And so the step that President Biden has taken has been against that coalition of both parties. But in that sense, what President Biden has done is constructive. On the other hand, you are correct that if politics change in the occupant of the White House, we could go back to a Trump era America First type of policy, which is destructive for our own economy as well as those of our partners.
Okay, thank you. Professor Zhang Yonglin. Well, we've been discussing, supply chain resilience and so on. On one hand, okay, pushing through the Indo-Pacific economic framework. On the other hand, there's another important, pact is going on, which is deeply related to supply chain issues or even the trade. The Chip 4 and the Science Act, in which the US, Japan, Korea, Taiwan involved. This is, very closely related to the free sort of flow of semiconductors, especially on the high-end semiconductor, in intermediate goods. So how you see, how this Chip 4 Act could be related to, IPEC, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. That's one question. Second question, let me take this opportunity to deliver my own personal view. Korea, China celebrated the 30th anniversary of diplomatic normalization. Okay, after deploying the high altitude THAAD defense system, China has frozen the Korean tourism or even Korea's K-pop music and all that stuff going into China's market. And China, we are afraid, may exercise, for some political reasons, stopping the supplying a key raw materials like the cobalt, magnesium, which is essential to manufacture electric battery. So how, you see, China and Korea to navigate through, win-win framework? And Koreans' economy and the Koreans are, very much anxious while actively joining IPEF. Well, we want to maintain the usual trade relationship with China.
Thank you. First, I make a comment on the Professor Huerta's, the view on the supply chains. I agree that every country has its political security, national security issue, and especially in this background of high competitiveness, for powers, for interest, and for any reasons. And also the COVID effects and shows you have to have some basic, security for the nation and so on. So I think now and in the future, every country will select some key areas for security reasons, and it will exclude it, and maybe just formulate among the close partners and so on. But for the general supply chains, and it's also very crucial, it's very important for economic movements, for the supply of social supplies and basic economic, growth and so on, employments or whatever. So I think we should secure this kind of supply chains more stable and secured. And as I mentioned, we may probably discuss it on the APEC level and on RCP, a special session to discuss how to, secure these basic supply chains. And so we may use these basic supply chains and to do it. And we have, this is very urgent, I think, except these emergent issues. Concerning the semiconductor, I think it's very, they probably to some extent relate to the points I made. That's the first priority political concern of semiconductor products supply chains, supply security. But personally, I also put a lot of suspicions on this kind of small circles, because China is a big market. It's big buyer. It's not, the buyer is not for China, for the supplies of the regional and global market. So, and Korea, the majority of its products, are purchased by China side. And if you see the automobile industries and invested mainly by the foreign companies here that account for the majority of the automobile sets. So this all need open, secured supply of these semiconductors. And China try hard to make it by its own, but I don't think it's enough to that. So you have the danger if you close it and all this kind of production chains and not the supply chains will be disrupted and will have a very heavy negative effects to the regional and global economies. So I hope this, whatever your kind of groups, you have to pick up some key and issues and try to highly reduce these negative effects to the others and also to their own. That is why I mentioned and China, Korea, whatever kind of disagreements they made, and both governments try to secure their basic supply chains and stability. And anything can be negotiated in the future. And so concerning bilateral relations, I think it will be a very challengeable situation in the future. And we don't know what will happen. And you see the Korean Peninsula situation is very risky. And if you see this strengthening that's U.S.-China strategic competition and conservative Korean government, and will have more closer cooperation with the United States. So we see some risk in the future, but some measures mentioned by Professor An is probably relevant to this COVID-19 policies, and will be more liberalized and also based on this current acceptable mood of the two governments. And we on China side, I think it's so important and crucial to stabilize China-Korea relations. If you see the very complex Northeast Asia, and it's more difficult to handle with the China-Japan relation than the China-Korea relations. So I hope I experienced, for instance, during the President Lehman Brothers time, a lot of problems. I was chair of a joint high-level expert committee. So we carefully handled all these differences. It seems Korean new government is very cautious about that, try to make some balance between the pro-US policy and stabilized China policy.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So I stop here.
Oh, okay. Dr.
But one danger, I think, because it's unpredictable risk in the future. Like Korean Peninsula and Taiwan issue. So it may disrupt many things we now discussed.
Okay, gentlemen, we have 10 minutes left. I'll give you each, about 2 minutes, okay, to wrap up. Before that, I would like to invite the Professor Che Byung-il. Dr. Che, we suffered the disruption of supply chain when China, after adopting the zero COVID policy, right? Shanghai and other major industrial cities went to lockdowns. Therefore, the supplies from these areas stopped. So it seems to me we need to diversify our supply source, many other parts, to avoid such unexpected sort of the pandemic impact. To do this, and also as you mentioned that the IPEF is less of the trade pact, it's more or less more the security pact. This leaves Korea should make all-out effort to join CPTPP as soon as possible. And so what is now the bottleneck, for Korea to, we have not submitted the official applications, although China, the UK, even Taiwan did that.
Well, Professor, I appreciate your questions, and also I was about to ask a similar question to Professor Urata, because my personal view is, as far as Korea is concerned, especially after seeing launching of IPEF, also some details, this is not right time for a new Korean government to spend so much political capital in applying for CPTPP. Because the main game in the town right now is not CPTPP, it is Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. Because, well, there's a lot of wishful thinking, CPTPP, well, they will come, US might come back. But to me, it doesn't happen. I have more strong view, even compared to Jeff. Because, the pendulum swing in US political landscape, whoever will be in White House, and which party will take control of Congress, I think, the US administration, they have less leverage in accomplishing major trade agreement. That's the reason why we see in the trade pillar, you don't see market access, because, they cannot deliver. And Obama tried, and he was almost get there. But, all this unraveling. So that means it is going to be too much risk for US to take so much at creating some undeliverable trade agreement. And it is so much, waste of opportunity. So if I were advised to Korean government, I'm going to say you should spend more time and energy in coming up with some early harvest, such as you identified digital pact or digital agreement, which can be critical important, and also more or less reliable, predictable supply chain by identifying this, the critical sectors. I think those two will be most important criteria. And I think CPTPP is going to be next, because to go through CPTPP, we need to deal with Japan. And between Korea and Japan, I think we have some bad blood running. I have to say because Japanese government, they gave a trade sanction some years ago to Republic of Korea, where two countries are sharing the same political system, same value system, but they were the one who linked security and trade. And so if Korea want to apply CPTPP, then that issue should be dealt with. And also that is, again, related with some Fukushima issues and some so on and so forth. So it is going to be, too much waste of very scarce political resource. We have seen early days Lee Myung-bak government. They tried to mend fences by establishing Korea-US alliance. And so they had so much confidence we can resume American beef. But it faced, political opposition. Even it was related to unfounded rumors, unscientific, but it was such a heavy political obstacle. So as for me, my personal view is instead of working for acceding to CPTPP, spend more time in coming with very constructive early harvest in IPEF.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, gentlemen, we're left with just a little bit more than 5 minutes. So I'll give you, each of you, 2 minutes to wrap up your major points. Maybe perhaps you can bring up which you would like to present or which you missed it. And then, let's see how this Asia-Pacific common prosperity on the level playing field, can come through. Jeff, please, you go first. 2 minutes each. Yeah.
Well, I'll be brief because I know 2 times 4 speakers is 8 minutes. But a very simple point, and that is that governments, by and large, are not doing the investing and the restructuring of supply chains. Businesses are doing that. And so what you want to do in international negotiations and through these international initiatives is to encourage the types of actions by individual companies, both private companies and state-owned enterprises, that will help build a sustainable and durable economy that can provide opportunities, employment opportunities and benefits for its people. And at the same time, you want to use the trade agreements to discourage governments from imposing actions that obstruct trade and investment and make it more difficult to achieve good economic results, even if countries want to do that for various political or other reasons. And so you have to find that balance. But don't lose sight of the fact that what you need to do is to get more investment. And that is what will ensure that we have better growth, more productivity, and higher living standards for our people.
Okay, thank you. And Professor Sujiro Hirata?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I'd like to see more countries participating in IPEF so that IPEF will be more effective and more important. And I'm not sure if you remember this, but excuse me, in my view, from Japan's point of view, Japan initially proposed free and open Indo-Pacific in 2005 or 2006. And we think IPEF is related to this. In other words, IPEF came out of this Indo-Pacific kind of initiative. And so that we'd like to see a success of IPEF. And we also understand there are differences in opinions, particularly developing members and developed members, as we heard today. And I like to see Japan and Korea to play a role of kind of bridging these two different groups so that we can find a solution. And for that, I agree with Jeff. It is a business which, major players. I'd like to see businesses, I'd like to see Japan and Korea help businesses communicate, within this IPEF framework, so that will put maybe more pressure on the government to make it a success. That's the message I wanted to get across. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you brought up the free and open Indo-Pacific. That's another, huge area. Okay. Zhang Yonglin, could you wrap up?
Okay. I still want to see we have a free and open region in the world, not just the Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific becomes so political. And second, I hope that IPEF avoid this becoming a political group. And if you want to do something, it should show this is an open and helpful and cooperative agenda for the future to invite more economies to be in. And the third, I think, what we have should do together, including China, we should do many things, because however China continue to be keeping that this open policy, that's the only choice to do it. And it's willing to hope to participate all kinds of possible negotiations in the future. So China is the second largest economy, the largest big trade partner is so crucial if you include China, and that a lot of negative effects we have to avoid. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Choi Byung-il?
Yes. Well, I think IPEF, if successful, has two possibilities at the end of evolution. One possibility is IPEF may evolve to 21st century Indo-Pacific economic version of NATO. So which means it is going to target it against specific set of countries, and it should provide some collective economic security. Other possibilities, it may become 21st century OECD. If you recall OECD, idea was country at similar stage of development can come together and discuss some common denominator. But it is still open to new members. So I think, which turn is going to make, I do not know. But we are increasingly aware unilateralism undertaken by big powers, and middle power country, IPEF is going to be a very important venue to come up together and to come up with something very constructive. But to conclude, I really want to see all in person. Especially, I want to say the Professor Zhang, you look like you lost some weight, and maybe your health is okay. But as long as China is behind someone like you, who is very moderate, reform-minded, open-minded, I think we have a fair chance of making success. Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, after listening to your really insightful, distinguished views, we have many did the architecture, IPEF, CPTPP, RCEP, and free open Indo-Pacific in terms of the Quad Plus. Now the Professor Choi brought up the OECD. Well, we should find out the very common subset cutting through all those multilateral architecture, leading toward the free and open, prosperous, and win-win framework for every country involved. Thank you very much for joining this program, and we've been together, now 3 years in a row, and seems to me you are getting healthy because you participated in this program, and sharing the common problems, and sharing the common agony we face, and I really hope we can see you again next year. Okay, thank you. So our meeting is adjourned.